will have to. So welcome to our program today. And I can tell by we have over 1,000 registrants that, okay, I hear noise. I'm going to have to, what I'm going to do now, everybody, is I'm going to just mute. Let's see, let me mute. Hold on a second here. I'm going to try to mute the participants. Let's see here. Okay, so it's not letting me mute the participants. That's not good. So I'm going to have to ask all of you. It is not letting me mute you. So please, if you would put your mute, hit the mute button so we don't hear you. But what we're talking about today is your hiring process, sabotaging, engagement, and retention. And this is a key question that many people are answering. And so that's why I want to cover this topic today with you, because everybody's complaining about a lack of engagement, a lack of retention, but so much of it has to do with the hiring process. And when, often I go in and I'm called in by companies to try to figure out why there's a lack of engagement, why there's a lack of retention. It almost always comes back to the hiring process. All of you, if you
no, I have it. I'm trying to log on to the.
Okay, if you guys could mute your lines, please. Oh God, this is horrible. Okay, can all of you mute your lines, please? Let me see if I'm going to try one more time if I can mute everybody. Let's see here. Okay, everybody, I do ask that you mute your lines, please. Okay, so let's get into the program. To ensure that your company—
I can't hear anything.
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Somebody unmute yourself and let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
You can hear me, okay, all right.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect, all right. So let's get into our program today. To ensure your company's hiring process is helping recruiting efforts, you need to regularly evaluate and update your process using a high-tech, high-touch approach. Now, I've done consulting for many companies, and what I realize is a lot of your initial processes are done online. And I understand. Could you please mute your background noise, please, everybody? Again, if you look at your hiring process, many times you have people apply online, and much of your initial contact with your candidates, potential hires, is done online. It's done through your websites, it's done through job boards, it's done by all these processes. The problem is the online process has gotten time consuming. And unless you have some type of human involvement, often people are not taking the time to go through your online process that's on your website, or that's the result of a job board ad, or however you're reaching out to candidates. And so my suggestion is, if you want to combine high tech and high touch, even if before people start your interviewing process, have a video. And we're so glad you're here. We're going to walk you through some processes. We're going to ask you to fill out an application. It's going to take you about 20 minutes, but that is going to be time well spent, because now I'm going to have the information I need to know what's most important to you, some type of video. So if your initial contact with your candidates is online, and many of you are using automated processes to screen candidates, you've got to put some videos in there. You've got to put some kind of human element in there. Technology can help us identify candidates quickly, but that human interaction is so important. The combination of high tech, high touch is what creates a hiring process that's going to attract the top talent needed to achieve your company goals. It's going to assist talent acquisition professionals and recruiters in attracting candidates. You're not going to lose them. You can align job requirements with your internal stakeholder needs and ensure that the candidates have a positive experience. I was on a panel recently and we were talking about the candidate experience. And it was interesting because I was representing, us, but there were companies, there were Fortune 50 companies, and there was one large company that was a pizza chain. And what they were saying, that they've noticed through big data, that if people apply to work at their pizza chain and they don't get any response, they just feel like they fell into a deep, dark hole. They quit buying this company's pizza. And so this company is losing customers. And maybe you don't sell pizza, but if somebody doesn't have a positive experience, even if it's just answering an ad, they're not going to ever come back. Maybe they're not qualified now. Maybe you've screened them out for whatever reason, but they have to have a positive experience. They have to hear something from you. I do calls weekly for job seekers. They don't know who I am, which is why it's fun for me to do these calls. And they complain about us all the time. They say, you just got a job to fill. You don't care about me. I'm a number. I go through this long application process and then I never hear anything. And so whether you hire a person or not, your future great hires could be people that aren't even qualified today. But if they have a good candidate experience, they might work for you a year from now, or they could refer people to you. And so what I would suggest that all of you do, step number one to evaluate your hiring process, I want you to apply for a job on your company's site. Like go online and try to apply for a job and see how your process goes. Is it friendly? Is it short? Is it concise? Or try to call your company. Say that you want, just call your company on the outside lines and say you're looking, for possibly to work for them and listen to how you're treated, because that's the initial impression that job seekers have of you. And often really qualified candidates just get frustrated in the process and they log off just because the process is taking too long. It's too cumbersome and there's not a human being involved. Your goal is not to only hire the best talent. I think we all want to hire the best talent, but we want to hire somebody who becomes engaged and retained. I want to share a statistic with you that you're going to hate. And I just heard this recently, that over 32% of people that are hired right now in the job market right now are quitting their job in the first 6 months. 32%. That's up from 25% just 90 days ago. So it's increasing the number of people that are taking jobs and quitting within the first 6 months. And they're not even handing in a 2-week notice. They're going to lunch and not coming back. The problem is if the interviewing process isn't right, if they're not asked the right questions, during the interviewing process, often they accept a job and take your job and they keep interviewing. Throughout my career, and I've been in this profession for almost 30 years, I've observed that most companies waste most time, energy, and money in 5 areas. And I want to go through these 5 areas with you because little subtle changes can help you improve your hiring process where it's going to enhance engagement and retention. Number 1, it's a job requisition. Number 2, it's your hiring parameters. Number 3, it's the lack of performance objectives. Number 4, it's the interviewing process itself. And number 5 is the candidate appraisal. And I know many of you are now being faced where you're trying to get a more diverse workforce. And often, without even realizing it, individuals involved in your hiring process may have unconscious bias. And you can put forth, as a talent acquisition professional, you can put forth diverse candidates, but unless you've revamped your hiring process, they're not going to be hired. Can everybody please mute their lines? Can everybody please mute their lines? I do hear people talking. If you could please mute your line, that would be great. So let's start out with the job requisition, number 1. The job requisition should be a roadmap for the recruiting process, period. Unfortunately, too often, your roadmap is outdated, it's boring, and it's repetitious. Your job requisition should really be part of your company's marketing collateral. I want you to think about that a moment. If you look at the job recs you're working right now, would you say that they were marketing collateral? That if somebody read a rec, they would go, God, I've got to work for that company. This is awesome. Or is it just a list of all these requirements that somebody needs to have? Your job requisition has to identify, that your company, what your company requires, but also it's got to provide candidates with a sense of your company. Who are you? What is your culture? What is opportunity? What are your opportunities for professional development and growth? Gen Z and millennials now make up over 50% of the workforce. And I want to share a statistic with you from LinkedIn. I do training for LinkedIn Learning. And so I have access to a lot of their stats. By the year 2025, and that's only 2.5 years away, over 70% of the workforce worldwide are going to be millennials and Gen Z. So in 2.5 years, and they are very interested in what your company stands for. They might be interviewing for a job with you, but they want to know where it leads. Don't be surprised if they're applying for a job, but they're trying to ask you, what's my next step? And I want you to think about your culture, because if I could read what your culture is on your website, but your culture is really what your employees say about you behind your back. And that's really your culture. And every department in your company has a different culture. If I'm in the accounting department, that's a very different culture than maybe your accounting department or your IT department or your sales department. I mean, departments have their own culture within themselves. But, I want you to look at your job requisitions. And if you were a candidate reading the job requisition, would you just be anxious and excited about reaching out to come and work for you? Because most job requisitions are outdated, boring, and repetitious. And that's why you're not able to attract the candidates and the talent that you really need to hire that will get to be engaged and retained. As I said, millennials and Gen Z are now the largest percentage of the workforce, and they want to know much more than merely what's expected for them to do every day. They want to know the challenges that they're going to face. They want to know the kind of development they're going to receive. They want to know that their work matters. And I don't care what level that you're hiring for. Millennials and Gen Z want to know that their work is helping your company achieve your goals and mission. And then they want to know where this job can lead. They're also very interested in, what are your philanthropic endeavors? What do you stand for? If you're interviewing an environmentalist and your company is not environmentally friendly, chances are they are not going to come and work for your company, because they will check it out. They will find out, what are your philanthropic endeavors? Who is your company? What footprint are you putting out there? Think of your first day at your current job. And I want you to think of what your first day at your current job was. I want all of you, think about your first day of your current job. And then I want you to think about what you're doing right now. Okay. Does your job that you're doing right now even resemble the job that you accepted? One of the individuals on the call introduced herself before the call, and her job totally has changed now. She went from being an HR generalist to now working as a talent acquisition professional. And that may sound almost like a demotion. It's not, because talent acquisition is really, one of the most important jobs in a company right now. And I want you all to think about that a moment. You're the heartbeat of every company. It kills me. I speak in front of corporate audiences all the time on your behalf, so that you know, because I'm tired of hearing that HR and talent acquisition is overhead. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because you're producing the talent that is helping your company obtain their goals and objectives. And I've predicted this for a couple of years, and I haven't seen it happen yet. But just like there's a CIO position right now because of technology, I think there should be a CRO position, a Chief Retention Officer, because retention and engagement, is so critical to the success of any company out there. And, it's estimated by SHRM and other organizations out there that when someone quits, it costs you at least a third of their base salary to replace them, at least. And some people that leave, it costs you a lot more. And so are you the most valuable person in your company as far as I'm concerned? Yes, you are, because that's why everybody is pressuring you so much to find talent. But again, it could be the hiring process. That's why I'm hoping we've got people on the line today that actually create the hiring process, or are part of the people that design the hiring process, because sometimes you're tying your talent acquisition professionals, you're tying their hands behind their back. They're doing a great job, and then timing or a cumbersome process, or an outdated job rec is preventing them from really getting the talent that you need to hire. But I want all of you to be very proud of what you do. You change people's lives for the better every year. Like I said, I've been doing this over 30 years. And if you told me 30 years ago I would be in the same profession, I would say that's impossible, because I'm sort of ADHD, undiagnosed. I have my squirrel moments, but, I need new every day. Well, isn't that what you and I do? We've got human beings on both sides of what we do. They both change their minds. They talk back. They do all kinds of crazy things. And so we don't have the same day every day. But I never want you to forget about the impact of what you do. But also those candidates that we can't hire or that we can't place in a job, we've got to make sure they have a great experience when they're interacting with us. You've got to look at what is the experience that candidates have when they apply at your company, and they're not going to be considered. Do they just feel like they fell in a deep, dark hole? Because that's what they're telling me on those weekly job seeker calls. And they don't forget. And the problem is, years ago, they might have complained to their family or their friends. Now they can go online and blast your company for how rudely they were treated. So make sure that you apply for a job, you try to call your company and do whatever you can to change that, to change the, to change the experience candidates are having. Again, as a result, you have got to update requisitions. And again, when you are hiring, when you're replacing somebody in a job, if that person has been in the job longer than 2 years, I am telling you, your job requisition is not valid. It's not valid, because they've used every talent of the person that is in the job. They might have hired them for another job, but then just a smart manager is going to use every talent you have, just like you're using more of your talents. And as a result, you've got to constantly update job requisitions each time someone is replaced to reflect the new requirements of the position. And I believe in using percentages. When you're writing job requisitions, I would suggest that all of you use percentages. What percentage of the job, what percentage of the time are you using what skill set? Because, what happens when you just have a laundry list of skills, what you're doing is you're screening out very talented people that have transferable skills, but because they don't match the laundry list of all these skill sets that are on a dated requisition, they're screened out. Start with your job title. And I know, you might have some very routine job titles, but, knowing that a candidate that you're trying to attract, you don't want someone to be confined to a standard job title. We once worked with a company who wanted to attract female candidates for their two top salesmen's positions. And so the first thing I discussed with the VP of sales was the job title salesman. He kept saying, I really want to hire women, Barb. I really need to get women. And this job is going to lead to a director of sales job. I want to hire women. And yet he was calling the job salesman. And I said, well, it could be a salesperson. That's better. And I said, how about let's look at the performance objectives of the job and let's find out what you want this person to do. We changed the title to business development manager, company wide. And so no one was called, a salesman anymore, because obviously that's male oriented, and yet they were trying to hire females. The title of business development manager is not as creative as master handshaker, but it was far more effective than salesman in attracting the right candidates. But I've seen some jobs for salespeople and they're calling them now master handshakers, and it just gets more attention. It's fun. If you want to recruit future hires who are creative, if you need to hire people that are out of the box thinkers, why should they have an in the box job title? Like a compelling brand, a compelling job title is one that promises the fulfillment of an expectation. And so and our salespeople necessarily handshakers in this day and age with so much done remote, but it gets attention. Do your job titles really reflect the job that your individuals are doing now? Next, number 2, I want to discuss your hiring parameters. And those are the aspects of the role that are aligned with company policy and are essential non-negotiables. Examples would be like your working hours, location, systems utilized, your company benefits. The 2 parameters that affect recruiting efforts most are location. Is there an option, especially with gas prices? And all we're hearing from candidates now, everybody wants to work remote. Isn't that funny? Everybody, that's the first thing they ask us. And then of course, salary and benefits. To attract top talent, consider innovative rewards that might attract top talent. Think about offerings like tuition reimbursement. I have a company recently that was having trouble, hiring. They wanted to hire IT graduates straight out of college, and they were not able to compete salary-wise with a lot of other companies. And so they decided to pay $100 towards student loans the first year the person worked for them, and $200 the second year, and $300 a month for the student loan. And by the time the student was with them 5 years, they were paying $500 a month toward their student loan. And you would not believe how that changed their whole recruiting efforts. Because even though the students were only getting $50 a month to start out with toward their student loan, other companies weren't offering any kind of tuition reimbursement. And they loved it. And so that solved their issue. Many companies are creating a hybrid work environment, which is a combination of in-office and remote. But again, when people say they want to work remote, everybody's just sort of asking for that. Ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you? And why is remote working? Because what we're noticing and what studies are showing, and you've got to share this with people that you talk to. Number 1, it's going to limit the jobs I can present to you because many of the jobs we have are on site. And number 2, there's a lack of collaboration and you're less visual. When you're on site working, you're interacting with people all day long. And studies are starting to prove that people that are working remote are not being promoted as quickly as people that are not working remote. So, you've got to show candidates the value to them, how they're going to benefit if they would consider a hybrid situation. So even though you've got some parameters that might be set in stone, think about those that are not. Third, and I think the most important thing that I would love to see every company change is the need to identify performance objectives so that the hiring manager, recruiters, or talent acquisition people and the prospective hire all know how they're going to be evaluated. And so I started doing this about 10 years ago. Well, I will not work on a job unless I have 5 performance objectives. And sometimes I ask a hiring manager, please give me 5 performance objectives. And they go, what is that? And I go, well, how are you going to evaluate the candidate in 6 months? And they go, we don't know. And think about that. If people don't know how they're going to evaluate your candidates in 6 months, then how are they going to be engaged and retained if the manager doesn't know how they're going to evaluate them? And I can tell you that we share the performance objectives with the candidates. And the reason we do this is because we've had candidates say, I don't want to be evaluated on that. I don't think I should be evaluated on that. I think I should be evaluated on this. Well, that's great, but that's not how you're going to be evaluated. And so too often we obtain a long list of requirements, and then we ask the candidate, will the candidate be evaluated? All of a sudden, when I ask for performance objectives, here's a job rec and here's the performance objectives, there's a big disconnect. They're asking for skill sets the person is never going to use or use very infrequently. And they're not asking for some things that the person would have to have if they're going to get a great evaluation. What I say to hiring managers all the time is, I want you to come back to me in a year and say, Barb, this was the best hire we've made. This is phenomenal. The performance objective is the foundation for the candidate's annual performance review and compensation considerations. And so that those performance objectives are shared with everybody in the hiring process. Because if you've got multiple people, which most of us do in the hiring process, sometimes they come in with a different agenda, depending how they're going to interact with that candidate. But when everybody agrees, this is what we're going to judge this person on, this is how they're going to be evaluated, and you share the performance objectives with the candidate so they know from day one what's expected of them, it absolutely enhances retention. And I don't want to say this because I guess my desk is what I should knock on wood here. But in the last 18 months, we have not had anybody quit a job that we have placed in a job in over a year, not one person, because we do a general interview, which leads me to the next really important point. Is the interviewing process is the foundation for everything you do. It's got to be effective. But in this current candidate-driven market, it's imperative that the prospective hire moves through the process quickly and effectively. Barry, I can hear your background noise. Can you please mute your noise? Barry Smith, you need to mute your line. So I want to talk about a general interview. Too often people apply for a job, and when we're interviewing candidates, we're interviewing them for a specific job. And we need to stop doing that, because you've got to find out what's important to them. You've got to find out what they want to do. You've got to find out what's most important to that person. And the reason you have to find out, could everybody mute their lines, please? I'm hearing some background noise. When you do a general interview, I don't want you to have any job in mind in your initial interview. I want you to have your performance objectives to know, okay, this is what the person has to do to be evaluated, properly, and then devise your screening process to cover what does this person need to have, okay, but then do a general interview. What we need to start doing with candidates is saying, what do you see yourself doing next? What's important to you? Rather than we've got this job and only interviewing for the job. Because when you interview for the job, the candidate can tell you're interviewing for a specific job. They can just tell. And they might not be that interested in the job, but because you're slanting your questions, because you can't help but slant them because you've got a job in mind, often you don't find out what's most important to the candidates. You know what they do? They interview with you, they take your job, and they keep interviewing. Like I said, 32% of all people are quitting within the first 6 weeks. We've got to stop that. The other thing is Google established the rule of 4. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that, which proves 4 interviews were enough to predict whether someone should be hired. And so, you've got to establish what are the steps of each part of that process. And whenever possible, my suggestion is to have a screening interview up front that is not a video where you can't see the person. It's strictly talking, but not where anybody can see the person. And then the second interviewing process should be a panel interview, because a panel interview, and these 4 people on the panel interview should either directly or indirectly interact with the candidate if they're hired. And what the panel interview does is the panel interview eliminates unconscious bias and emotion from the hiring process. If you want to promote your DEI efforts, go to a panel interview, because then one person doesn't have the power to screen somebody out. And so it's extremely important to look at your process. And if it involves more than 4 steps, you've got to really streamline your process. Google has studied this, other major companies have studied this, and the best companies, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen where an interviewing process is supposed to be 3 interviews, and the first person interviews somebody and realizes they've got a rock star, and all of a sudden everybody interviews a person that same day. And so sometimes the interviewing process goes longer because they don't like the quality of person that they're interviewing. They're still out there looking for someone else. But if you present top talent, and these are the people that are hard to find, your process has to be efficient, quick and efficient. The 5th area, and finally, which is so important, well, you know what, I want to go back to interviews for a second. I want to give you some questions, and I don't know if this is part of your interviewing process or not, but I want to give you 6 questions. And I know this isn't interviewing training, but I think the lack of what's being done in the interview is what's adding to a lack of engagement and retention. I want to give you 6 questions that I feel you should include in every interview that you do. And so again, this is being recorded. You're going to get the recording. If you want to write it down, great. It's not on the slides. I thought of this when I was going through the program this morning, but I'm not teaching you how to interview. You know how to interview, but I want to give you the most relevant questions that'll help engagement and retention. Number 1 is, what do you see as your next career move? Because now you know the kind of position that they're going to accept. If someone has 100% of what you want on your rec, they've done the job, they've done exactly what you're looking for, even if you pay them more money, it's a lateral move. It's a lateral move, but it's just more money. People want to grow. People want to advance in their career. And so that's why the people you hire this job should be a little bit of a stretch. They should be capable of doing the job and achieving the performance objectives, but ask them what they see as their next career move. Ask them if they could change 5 things about their current job, what would they change? That is the only way you find out why somebody will really consider a change and not use you to get a counteroffer. Counteroffers are being accepted daily at this point, and counteroffers are being extended 3 months, 4 months after you hire somebody because the person they hired didn't work out or they weren't able to fill the job. So they go back after your hire after 3 months, and so if you say, what are the 5 things you change about your current job if you were your boss? If it's only money and advancement, they're using you to get a counteroffer. The other thing I suggest against counteroffers is ask the person, what are you going to do if you get a counteroffer? Because often they'll say, well, it depends on what it is. So in that case, I'm going to say, go back. I don't want you to jeopardize the loyalty you have with your company right now. Don't jeopardize that. Go back and ask for your promotion and your increase in pay. And because again, if they go back and ask for it and don't get it, then you can hire them. Because then if they get a counteroffer, now they're insulted because they tried to get one. Some people will say, I would not accept a counteroffer. Ask them why and put it in your ATS or CRM and let them know, by the way, you're going to get a counteroffer. And when you do, I'm going to read your words back to you. That is the way we've overcome every counteroffer we've received this year. Is the minute they're tempted to get a counteroffer, what we say is, by the way, remember in the interview when I asked you what you would do if you got a counteroffer and you said, absolutely not, I would never consider that. I want to read your words back to you. And I want to remind you of the 5 things that you would have changed if you were your boss. None of those are money and advancement. And all of a sudden it brings them back to your initial interview because a counteroffer is a compliment. But we've got to stop these counteroffers. Ask them why they've changed. Number 3, ask them why they've changed jobs in the past and what must be there for them to accept a job today, because COVID has let everybody reevaluate everything. And we cannot assume what a person is doing now is what they want to do. In fact, I told you to use percentages when you do your recs, when you're interviewing candidates. What percentage of the time are you doing what in your current job? And what percentage of the time do you want to do things in your next job? If somebody has 5 skill sets, you're going to, there's 5 areas of responsibility. I would assume, okay, you're doing each one 20%. What if one is 90% and the other 4 are 10%? That's a very different job. Use percentages when you interview. The 4th question I want you to ask everybody is, have you turned down any offers in the past 12 months? And if you did, why? So often you think you've got a great candidate and they just turned down something that's very similar to what your company is offering. Number 5, what salary range would you consider? Salary band laws have prevented many of us from asking, what did you make at your last job? But you've got to know if they're in the ballpark. Candidates are legends in their own minds right now, and they're asking for ridiculous amounts of money. And every department has a budget. And I know we'd all like our company to pay people more, but our companies are in business to make a profit. And we've got to stay within the budget. And so don't waste your time. Know what salary range you're looking for. And lastly, what are the 5 greatest accomplishments they've had and what was the impact on their past employers? If you do that in your interviewing process, if you ask those 6 questions, the candidate now feels that you care. Human beings want to know 3 things. Even you want to know 3 things. And so do I. In any relationship, we want 3 things answered. Can I trust you? Do you care about me? And are you going to do what you tell me you're going to do? And that's why when you're interacting with candidates, the answer to all 3 of those questions should be yes, whether you hire them or not. They have to have some kind of positive experience, but these questions show them that you care. Okay. Now, the last thing that I mentioned, the last part of your hiring process is the appraisal, which has to be consistent. Each person should be given an appraisal scorecard based on the performance objectives, and there should be a grading process. And I think the grading process should never be higher than 5, 1 to 5. And you teach them what do those grades stand for. If done properly, the candidate appraisal process will help you identify and hire the best candidates. But it also provides the candidate's future supervisor with great insight into the candidates after they're hired, because you're going to share these scorecards with their supervisor. The scorecard should grade the candidates against the specific performance objectives for each job, as well as technical abilities, soft skills, whatever you need. The scorecard accomplishes 2 things pre-hires. It rates candidates during interviews and helps you hire talent that have the best chance of success. And it accomplishes 3 things post-hire. It helps rate performance after the hire. It identifies gaps in your interviewing or your hiring process and helps identify additional actions or training that are needed. You now understand how your hiring process can either enhance or hinder your recruiting efforts. There is always pressure to fill open requisitions. I think we all feel like hamsters on a wheel right now. We do. But you've got to realize how important it is to initiate these changes. If your hiring process has not been upgraded in the last 2 years, you really have to sit back and upgrade it. And if the people that are the people that create your hiring process, if they're not on this call, you're going to get the recording very shortly, probably by tomorrow. Share this recording with everybody involved in your hiring process so they realize. And what I would suggest all of you do is go through the 5 areas. Go through the 5 areas that I went through with you where most companies waste the most time, energy, and money. And start with the area that's going to have the greatest impact on improving your specific hiring process. It could be different for every one of you. But again, none of us can afford, our job is so critical. We're under such pressure. We can't afford to have a hiring process. And then when people don't work out, often they come back and say, well, the candidate you gave us didn't work out. Well, maybe the job rec was outdated. Maybe, the job that they described isn't the job that they're given. Maybe they don't like their boss. You've got to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of these job requisitions. And hiring managers, when you're sitting across from a hiring manager, I always let them know my job is to make you look good. That's my job. And the more you can tell me, the better job I can do for you. I want the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I don't want to just find talent for you. I want them to be engaged and retained and get promoted within our company. I would love them to be here 3 years from now in a much higher role. That's what I like. That's what I want for you. And when we talk that way, whenever you and I talk to somebody, whether we're talking to a candidate, a hiring manager, somebody in our department, I think that what we all have to remember is people have a tattoo on their forehead, and it's what's in it for me. So every time you're talking to a hiring manager, that's all they wonder is what's in it for me to do what you're asking me to do. Candidates, that's all they want to know. What's in it for me if I come to work for you? And your coworkers, people just want to know what's in it for them. And never forget those 3 things that every human being wants to know in any relationship. And you and I are in a relationship building business. Recruiting and talent acquisition is the only sales type of job in human resource, because we are selling our company, we're selling opportunities to candidates, we're selling candidates to hiring managers. It's a sales process, but it also is relationship building. If you let people talk about themselves, they're going to like you more. If you ask them what's most important to them before you present a job, they're going to feel like you care about them. I'm telling you, job seekers feel like a number. They feel we have a list, and we just keep talking to people until finally somebody says yes. They can't feel like that anymore. It's too tight of a marketplace. Now, I am going to open the lines for questions, but I do want to go over one thing real quickly for you. If you enjoyed my webinar today, the information I shared probably represents 3% of something I've just developed, because I've been doing a ton of training of talent acquisition professionals in the last couple of years, more than I've ever done before. And so what I did in the last year is I went in a studio and I put down everything I know. And I basically did a 10-day program that could train a brand new person in talent acquisition and give them everything they need. Or it could take a tenured talent acquisition professional and just give you some new things to do, some new techniques, because so much has changed. And what I'm including with the training is, yes, it's a 10-day curriculum and it's video, because most people don't want to read anymore, but I'm giving you copies of scripts and forms. And I do a live webinar like this once a month for my training clients. So once a month, you'd have a webinar where you could interact with me and ask questions. I also do a live coaching call every month where people just ask me questions. It would improve your intake process. You would proactively recruit the best talent. I think we could teach you how to fill recs faster, and it would help you fine tune your negotiation and closing skills. And so that's the end of my commercial because I want to take your questions. But we're launching this in July. I have a learning management system that I created, but when I went to load videos, I didn't think about bandwidth. So I had to develop a new learning management system because of all the videos. And so we're going to launch this in July. If anybody invests in our tutor before the end of this month, they'll get a 25% discount. And just so you know, once you own our tutor, it would only cost you $50 for as long as the person works for you, for them to have access to the training, all the calls, all the coaching calls and everything. And if one person goes through the program, everybody in your department can listen to the calls, obviously. So there's a great advantage there. So now what I want to do is I want to take questions. I think the most important part of any training that I do is to take your questions. And so if anybody has a question, if you want to unmute yourself, give me your name and give me your question. I'd love to answer them. Any questions? Okay, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Barb. This is Shelby Weidler.
Hi, Shelly. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for doing this course for all of us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned the different job titles.
Mhm.
How do you get around the keyword search that people are using to find the jobs? How do you
Right, a lot of them are, I agree with you, but the keyword search also takes in the whole job description. It doesn't just take in the job title. And so you're going to have keywords in your, like when you're doing a job posting, that type of thing, you're going to have keywords in your posting. It's just, and I'm telling you that many places are starting to study this, that the unique titles are getting, or maybe you could put, the normal title and then now, chief handshaker, or you could put, now known as, and maybe you could use both, but in the description, you're going to have keywords for the keyword searches.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hi, Barb. This is Tanya LaFrenz. How are you?
I'm fine, Tanya. How are you?
Good. Never mind. I've known of you for such a long time, and thank you so much. So I wanted to talk about video interviewing
Mhm.
because I'm really not comfortable with some of the tools that are out there.
Mhm.
I myself as a contract recruiter have been interviewed that way, and HireVue and all these different, and to me, it's very impersonal. And so what are your thoughts on the video interviewing, meaning not me and the candidate, but the tool that uses that and then, then screens out the candidate?
Yeah, unfortunately, video interviewing is here to stay. It just is. And most people are very comfortable with video interviewing. Depends on the age bracket. Like millennials and Gen Z, they love the video interviews. They love it, and the problem is you've still got a good percentage of the workforce that is working remote or virtual. And so, many interviews are being done by a lot of these different tools. I think you've got to, take your time to really research different tools, and look at the one that you're the most comfortable with. But video interviewing is here to stay. It just is. But you can also do panel interviews on video. There's different ways that you can do this, but they're not going away because they're cost effective. They're very cost effective. And
okay, maybe I'm asking the question incorrectly.
Okay.
So I usually recruit for high level, like data science. Okay. So those folks are not going to go do a video and then come talk to me. So it's not going to happen. So anyway, what I'm asking is for high level positions, I've not used those, maybe for call center or lower level positions.
No, absolutely. And all of you have to realize that another thing I want to share with you is companies spent $2.5 billion. These are not my numbers. These are LinkedIn's number. Because I've done so many courses for them, I have access to a lot of their big data. Companies spent $2.5 billion on job board ads last year. And they've proven that attracts less than 15% of the job market. So posting and praying is not working. Expecting high level talent to go through an application process or do a video it just doesn't work. That's why you heard me at the very beginning say high tech, high touch. When it's these hard to find individuals, they want to hear from you. They want to talk to you. They don't want to, they're not going to go through anything. They're not going to go through anything online. They're not going to do a video. They're not going to fill out. In fact, most of the candidates won't even send you a resume or a CV. What they're going to say is, look at my LinkedIn profile. That's, and again, I just did some consulting for a company and they said, Barb, these crazy people want us to look at their LinkedIn profile. And I said, so what do you do? And they go, we don't, unless they fill in our paperwork. I said, so then you let your competitors hire that talent? Are your competitors doing a LinkedIn profile? They go, we don't know. I go, well, maybe if you do it, it'll give you a competitive edge. Like, you've got to adjust based on the talent you're going after. But we have to go after the 85% of the people that are out there working. And when they survey the working population right now, very few people intend to retire from their current place of employment. Very few of them. And so most people are keeping. Another statistic that came out of LinkedIn that's a horrible statistic is, it used to be that after somebody accepted a new job, within 90 days they would update their profile as available or open, and now people are updating their LinkedIn profile as available within 24 hours after they start a new job. So they're keeping their feelers out there. So when you're going after those passive candidates, maybe not somebody that came to you, but somebody you're trying to go after and attract for your company, you can't do video interviews, you can't do paperwork, you can't do an online process. You're going to lose them. And again, when I first started recruiting, this shows you how old I am, technology wasn't there. So it was very relationship, very, very high touch. Then we brought technology in, and I'm very technical, by the way. I use technology constantly, but I think the high tech, high touch is where we've got to get to. There's still this is still a relationship building business, and you've got to know who you're hiring. And even if your company says we got to do video interviews first, you've got to show them how they will benefit by not doing that. We can't do that. That's not going to work. Not for this talent.
Yeah, Miss Barb, I've been recruiting for 30 years as well. I'm 55.
Oh goodness!
It's all I've ever done.
I hear you.
And the other thing, I guess I'll just spank myself for, but I really don't like to do, I don't like to have my camera on. I'm older. I don't see so well. I work on dual monitors. I'm always looking around.
Okay, Tanya, you got to get over yourself. You got to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, so how do you feel about that, and maybe what that candidate experiences that they have theirs on and I don't have mine on? And
it's an absolute, it absolutely has a negative effect. And what you do is you learn, I've got my laptop in front of me. My laptop is raised. So you get one of those holders that you put the laptop above you.
I do. Yep. I do.
I've got a light next to me, one of those little, lights where it lights you up. And again,
I need to get one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not seeing you is much more negative than than the fact that you're in your 50s. Nobody cares. You've got all this experience.
It's not even about that. It's not about that. It's usually that I'm running by the seat of my pants and I haven't showered in a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My hair isn't perfect. I don't have anything, that kind of thing. The last thing I want to say that I have learned in 30 years is the difference between cultural fits and cultural add.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I wanted to share that with everyone because there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference. That's a whole nother program, Tanya.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have kept that on my little sticky.
I hear you. I've got some chats in here. I want to go to the chats and see what people are saying in the chat line real quick. Let's see here. Do you have a tutor related to external recruiter stages, strategies in LinkedIn? Yes, I do have a course. It's called Recruiting Foundation for External Recruiters on LinkedIn. Let's see, Barb, please don't use my name. Our company leadership recently removed the desired compensation range from our online application. They did it with no notice to talent acquisition. It's created a ripple negative impact on our process. Can you speak to this ridiculous move? I'm certainly leadership signed up for today, but aren't here. So they'll hear it on the recording, which is awesome because you have to, and when you make major changes like that, I'm telling you that individuals, involved in talent acquisition have to have a seat at that table. When you're making any changes to the hiring process, you have got to have your talent acquisition people there because they're dealing with this day in and day out. And you make a change that seems like nothing, but again, ties their hands behind their back. Thank you. This is very informative. I have to run to a meeting, but would love the recording. You're all going to get it. Do you have any training on how to increase referrals? We're not getting employee referrals. I heard you do programs on that. It's interesting because, okay, I've got another one here. I was just approached at a conference I did last week if I would do a free webinar on how do you improve your employee referral program. And so I came back and told my team I'm going to do that. I wasn't planning to do that. I was doing this one already. So on June 30th, I think we're going to do it on June 30th. I think that's the date we picked. On June 30th, I'm going to do a free webinar on how do you at least get 40% of your new hires from your current employees. I want you all to think about something. Your current employees are either your army of recruiters or they're being recruited away. So everybody that works for you, every candidate that you've ever interviewed, they're either out there telling people how great you are and they're promoting you, or they're being recruited away by someone else. And so, and every time I review internal employee referral programs, they're not good. And so I am going to be doing free training on the 11th. I don't know what time yet. My team is setting that up, but anybody that's on this call, when you get the recording, we'll give you information. We'll make sure you get information on that next webinar. So I will be doing that. Do you have any links to reports indicating on-site employees are more likely to be promoted versus remote employees? No, but if you go, I don't have any links that I can give you to reports, but if you go online, look at if you just go and Google, what is the negative impact on promotion and working remote? There's a tremendous amount of information from very reliable sources like Fortune and Forbes and Google had some stuff out there. LinkedIn had some things. One of the challenges with creative titles that we have found is that they don't show up in searches very well. If they don't know what to search for, they might not find. Okay, I've already answered that one. Who do you feel give us the best chance of being retained? I can tell you where you don't run into problems with retention is when one of your employees has referred somebody and they get hired, and then they get a bonus because that person is hired, and now they become their unofficial mentor. So I also think that when you improve your employee referral program, you're also improving retention. You just are, because that person that referred them. Let's see. If you offer a candidate a job offer within the salary range discussed and also based their skill sets, but then they counteroffer for more than their original ask, how do you tell them based on their skill set, the offer stands? You're going to get this all the time. Counter offers are more money and more investment. And you've got to tell them, and if they say, what does the job pay? You never answer them the question. You say, what is the range you're looking for? We're within that range. It depends on how well you interview. If my interviewers, if our hiring team doesn't feel you need any training, the offer could go to the top of the range. If they're interviewed and they feel there's a learning curve, it might go to the lower part of the range. It just depends on how well you interview. And so that's the way you answer that question. You answer the question with the question. What range are you looking for? And then if they don't get what they want, they feel, gee, I must not done that well in the interview. So they don't blame you for a low ball. They realize they haven't done something. And so that's the way you would handle that, And again, is money going up now? And I'm telling you, we had somebody recently get a $30,000 counteroffer that they didn't take. And the reason they didn't take it, and when I saw the counteroffer was $30,000, I was like, oh my God, this is not good. Now, this was a person making, $200,000 a year, but they literally were going to bring her to $230,000 if she would stay. But there were such major things that she couldn't stand about her company. And the benefits that are at the other company were much better, cheaper and much better. Plus the bonus plan more than made up for that $30,000. And then we kept reminding her of why she wanted to leave, and she didn't take it. And that was the highest counteroffer I've seen come through. But, and again, you've got to know when to walk away. You've got to discuss, as talent acquisition professionals, often we're not comfortable discussing money, but you've got to discuss it. You've got to know what offer they're going to accept without hesitation. What is the range you're looking for? And then you've really all got to become benefits experts too. I don't care if your job title is benefits expert or not. You've got to know what benefits your company has, what are the deductibles, when is the eligibility, and how much does it cost? Because benefits can make or break a deal. If you have family coverage, that could be worth a $24,000 increase in pay. Gross, maybe like 18 net. But if you offer, total benefits, that's worth a lot of money to people right now. A lot of money. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions you'd like to open your lines and ask me? Those are all the chats. Any other questions?
Barbara, this is Shelby Weitler again. I have one more question.
Sure.
Can you tell me, is there a company that stands out to you that writes great job recs so that we can look at them for inspiration?
Great job recs. I think the people that are writing the most creative job recs now are like the advertising industry, people that are more creatives. they're coming up with things. But if again, Google, if you just Google what are creative job titles, it's amazing what you could see. Or if you just go online and look at the more creative jobs, just think about what would be appealing. And again, a creative job description could be something like, do you want to work with a group of fabulous coworkers who really back each other? And not only that, they want to be here in 5 years and they want to help each other elevate, through our different, promotional opportunities that we have. Something that excites them about, we work hard, we play hard. If your company has, it was interesting because recently, one of our companies that we represent, they started a baseball league. And it was crazy because they wanted us to put that, as we're recruiting, we have a baseball league now, and they have a softball league. And then now they're starting a bowling league. They're starting all these things after work because the millennials and Gen Z like to get together after work, And so I said, if you're doing that, then put videos on your website of your people playing baseball, playing softball, bowling, having fun after work. And so now in their job descriptions, they're saying, and not only is it a great job, but you can really have fun with your coworkers after work because we have many different leagues. So it's all of the above. It's not just the job description and title that are unique. It's what makes you unique, what makes your environment unique that is going to stand out, where it's marketing collateral. If you think of your requisition as marketing collateral, you write your job requisition differently. You just do.
I actually have an answer to that question.
Okay.
So I was working for a company, it's called Engage to Excel.
Mm-hmm.
Engage #2 Excel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was Decision, hold on a second, because they actually have writers who write their job descriptions. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm, great. So I'm glad you. So again, Shelby, if you want unique, then go to that company. Say the company one more time, Tanya.
Sure. Engage.
And
#2.
Okay.
Excel. EXCEL.
Okay. So everybody that wants to see a unique thing, go to Engage to Excel and look at their job descriptions.
And then
again,
hold on a second. I think it was Decision. Hold on a second.
Okay, I've got to go back to the chat lines, Tanya, because I've got a few more questions.
I'll keep looking.
Okay, let's see here. Well, these are just, thank you. Are you noticing a trend of candidates appearing greedy? It seems companies are willing to pay or offer good benefits, hybrid and remote options, yet some things don't seem to be good enough for them, and they keep asking for more. Absolutely, positively, yes. When I said the candidates are a legend in their own mind, and the problem is your company can't bring new people in at much higher levels than your current team, because people talk. People know what each other make. I mean, they might not think that people are going to talk, but they do, and so I think that it's really, really, really important that, that if they get totally greedy, you've got to walk away. I mean, you can't have somebody, there's got to be some room. Your hiring managers have to know if it's a very, very hard to find person, might they get a counter offer? Might we have to go to the top of our range? The answer is yes, but you can't go more than within your budget. Is there an English test you can recommend for outsourcing bilingual recruitment that is most effective to determine the applicant's English level, call center, customer service, sales? I would tell you that almost LinkedIn Learning has more information on it than any other resource I've ever seen in my life. LinkedIn Learning will teach you anything. It has all kinds of different testing available, and that's so I would go to LinkedIn Learning first. And then obviously there's the big companies that provide testing that can, and again, if you Google and then look at the ratings, I always read the reviews, on anything that I'm going to try to use. But LinkedIn Learning has a whole, they just have such tremendous training. They're always the place I go first. Our employee referral program is awful. I don't think 5% of our new hires are referrals. Can I have the date again? It's June 30th. It's June 30th. And again, it'll probably be in the afternoon. Knowing my team, we usually do calls in the afternoon, and all of you that are on this call will get a recording for this call, and you will also get all the information on the next call I'm going to do. And that'll be, how do you develop an internal employee referral program? Because I'm telling you, 40% of your hires, and I'm going to say it one more time, your employees are either your army of recruiters out there telling everybody what a great place you are to work, or they're being recruited away. There's nothing in between. So are they going out there and helping you? because as a talent acquisition professional, would it be great if everybody that you put in a job was telling everybody how great you are and how great the company is? I mean, your job just gets to be more fun. Can you give me pricing for the tutor? The pricing again is to buy the tutor itself, it's right around $2,000, discounted from almost $3,000. Once you own it, to put somebody through it, it's $50. So once you own the tutor, it would cost you $50 to train anybody involved in talent acquisition in your company. So we've priced it very reasonably, very reasonably. And again, call our office. There's a number there, or I gave you my email address. So if some of you if you want to email me direct, I'm always taking calls. People don't believe how they call and I answer my phone. I've always been that way. So if you want to, you might not get a response as quickly from me as opposed to calling my office. But, if you've got a question or you want to, you want an outline of the training and all the training that's involved, or you want to speak to one of our experts, just call our office or please email me at that address. Okay, I've got more chats here. Let's see here. Okay, these are all thank yous. You're very welcome. I'm glad you guys enjoyed this. Now, let me explain something before we get off. There's no power in what I just did. My training is not powerful. And people always laugh when I say that. But, you can come to training and I'm glad you're enjoying it. I love the notes you're sending me, but the power lies within you. What are you going to change? Showing up for the training is number one. Now what are you going to do with the information? Because if you showed up today and you don't change anything in your hiring process, this was a waste of your time. And I don't want to see that. If you're not the person that creates the hiring process for your company, please share this with those people. Because I'm telling you, I got hired by a company right outside of Washington, D.C., and I got hired from them. I got hired by them because they had no females and no minorities in the C-suite, none. And they have governmental contracts. And so I walked in and they wanted me to teach their recruiters how to recruit diverse candidates. So I went in and the HR manager was a Black female. The HR director was a Black female. Half of the team were minorities. And here I walk in and I'm supposed to teach them how to recruit minorities. And I could tell when I walked in, they weren't happy that I was there at all. And I said, okay, obviously, I'm amazed that they called me in to teach you how to recruit minorities. I said, it's got to be your hiring process. And they go, yes, it is. And I said, so give me all the diverse candidates that you've submitted that have been screened out. And it was their hiring process. And so I told the gentleman that hired me, I said, you don't need me. You got to change your hiring process. And he said, Barb, I said, I'm leaving. I can't teach them anything. They know what they're doing. I'll give you a refund. It's your hiring process. And so he said, would you have lunch with the people that are involved in our suite? I said, absolutely. Well, two of the men, it didn't take much for me to really set them off so I could pick the two people that had unconscious bias without even realizing it. And when they left after lunch, he goes, those are the two, aren't they? And I said, they're screening everybody out. And I said, so don't blame HR, don't blame talent acquisition. It's your hiring process. So I hope that none of you have your hands tied behind your back. I will do everything I can to help you, develop a hiring process that lets you do your job, get requisitions that let you attract the best talent. And then next time at our next program, I will teach you how to do an internal referral program that will really increase the amount of employee referrals you get. And again, I would love if you feel your team needs training, if you feel you need training, this training is specifically for talent acquisition people. This is not for staffing and recruiting recruiters. I've got other training that is signified for that, but this is specifically for HR departments and talent acquisition professionals, this particular product. So I don't see any more chats. We're at 1:59. I can't believe we're ending right on time, but I believe in doing that. Let's see. Thanks, Barbara. A group of us ladies met you in Denver and we love learning from you. Well, I love that you're here and I love Denver. So we're just having a nice love fest here, right? And all your comments are wonderful. But you know what I would love to hear? I would love for you to share your success stories with me. All of you join me on LinkedIn. Make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn because LinkedIn also lets me unlock some of my courses every so often. And if you follow me, then you get access to those things. So everything I put on LinkedIn is for talent acquisition and recruiters, everything. So join me on LinkedIn. You will get the recording of this. And I hope you call my office. And I'll guarantee you one thing. If you have a conversation with us, it's not going to be a waste of your time because we only focus a short conversation on what's important to you. So I hope we get the chance to talk to you. And I look forward to all of you joining our next webinar. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Have a great day. Send me your success stories, please. Bye, everybody.